Ready to start?
Yes.
Let's get started.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
I
good.
guess
Let's do it.
Gotti, I'm just
Sandy
going to
is
bring
first.
some greetings. It's Sandy Siegel, president of NAMAT Canada. So,
Hello.
okay. So,
609.
So if everybody can mute, please, and I just want to say a quick hello and greetings on behalf of NAMAT Canada, and also so happy that we're all joining together again with NAMAT USA and with Gadi. It's nice to see you again virtually back in Israel. And so I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. I'm very excited. This is so exciting. Some of you I just saw on a call. We're Zooming a lot today, but it's wonderful that we are able to get together through Zoom to celebrate Hanukkah together. Our Chavarot from USA and Canada are able to join together, which I think is a wonderful thing. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Jan briefly, and Chag Sameach to everybody.
So Jan, 1 minute, let me mute everyone and then you'll unmute you and speak.
Can you scoot your chair up and I can bring it?
Okay. Thank you, Sandy. In a holiday season where we celebrate miracles, bringing NAMAT sisters from across the US and Canada definitely feels like a modern day miracle. And how meaningful it is to bring our celebration to Israel. Gadi, thank you for making that possible. I would now like to introduce Melanie Kutnick, who has been the Cleveland Board Chair for the past 2 years. Melanie is a life member and she's proud to continue her mother's tradition of devoted volunteer service on behalf of the women and children of Israel. Melanie. Are you there, Melanie?
You need to unmute yourself, Melanie.
I know she's there.
Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. As Hanukkah is a celebration of light, I think it is only fitting that right now we can actually see the light, a little light at the end of this tunnel we're all going through. So there's a ways to go, but we can see that spark of light. So I just want to tell you all that this program today is the brainchild of our own Linda Schoenberg. She wanted to build on the success of our Israel trips of last summer using our terrific tour guide, Gadi, and so a shout out to Linda for this, what I think is a unique take on Hanukkah programming. So now I would like to introduce Deanna, who is our United States NAMAT National Executive Director.
Thank you, Melanie, and Linda and Marcy for all you've done for this program today. Welcome and happy Hanukkah to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. After the dark year we've all had, we hope that getting together today will help renew the light in our lives. I'd also like to give a quick thank you to Vivian Reisler and all of NAMAT Canada for planning and co-sponsoring this event with us. Don't forget to keep muted, and if you have any questions, please put them into the chat and we will try to answer them as we go along. There'll be a Q&A afterwards. Just wanted you to know that you are all the little lights in NAMAT, and together we are all strong. With that, I'd like to introduce Gadi Ben-Dov for Oil Vey.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again. Shalom to all of the new friends and old friends. It's great to see everyone and come to Israel once again. We will start our tour in a moment, and we'll go straight to Israel and start traveling around. Wow, we have a lot of people. This is very exciting, so this is great. And today we're going to talk about Hanukkah. We're going to talk about oil and light and all those connections and why Hanukkah is an important holiday in our tradition. So hopefully you'll learn some new things, you'll see some new places, and this will be, I think, exciting for everyone. Also, if you didn't get your Chanukiot ready for our lighting at the end, this is another reminder to get your Chanukiah ready. We're going to be lighting them here in Modi'in as well with you. It's already the fourth candle here in Israel, so we'll be lighting those Chanukiah with you at the end. All right, so let us start. Let's start traveling around and seeing what we have here. So prepare your Chanukiot. Happy Hanukkah with Amy and Gadi. Amy is my wife. You'll get to meet her at the end of the session. She'll come in and bring some of our of the Chanukiah to light with us. So the story of Hanukkah actually starts in a little bit farther than the land of Israel, in a place called Macedonia or Greece at the time. The Macedonians and the Greeks are actually fighting about who Alexander the Great really belongs to. He was from Macedonia originally, conquers the entire known world at the time, all the way even as far as Pakistan and India of today. And of course, to get to Egypt and to Africa and into Europe and into Asia, our little country here in the middle is the land bridge, as it is in all of these time periods, to get from one point to the other. So the Greeks take over. Here he is, Alexander the Great. This is from a mosaic in Pompeii in Italy. He takes over the world. He dies at a young age, and the area is divided between 4 of his generals. And we end up in the area of the king that is in Damascus, and his name is Antiochus. And the 4th version of Antiochus, Damascus is over here, but he rules all the way in this area of the land of Israel. And of course, up until then, we didn't really have problems with other rulers that allowed us to continue to do our Judaism. The Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, all of those guys more or less let us do what we needed to do. But the Greeks had a different idea. They didn't allow us to continue our worship in the temple. And the word Chanukah at the end of this battle that took place, which we'll talk about soon, the word Chanukah comes from the word dedication, dedicating the new house or the temple after 3 years. I know that many of us think that the story of Hanukkah was over in a few days, but in fact, it took 3 years for the Maccabees to free the land. And the battle started during the holiday of Sukkot. So during Sukkot, we were not able to celebrate Sukkot that year, which is one of the reasons that we celebrate for 8 days. Because when the temple was liberated once again, they wanted to celebrate Sukkot once again. And the word education or chinuch comes from that as well, which is, I think, a very interesting connection to this idea that when you dedicate the temple, you want to educate the people on how to do this. What is going on here? Okay, I'm giving you a little, I'm going to be a little dizzy here. I'm sorry. Let's continue and start our tour here. While the Jews were living all around the country, we actually had non-Jews living here as well. And one of the most important cities of non-Jews at the time was the city of Marisha. And Marisha is an interesting place. It's actually about 20 miles southwest of Jerusalem. And what we found there in Marisha were lots of these bell caves. This was the basement and the quarries for these people. You can see they're called a bell cave. You can see the shape of it so that it doesn't cave in. And this is soft limestone or chalk. And it also created a space where they could work, where they could have their basements essentially for hanging out and watching TV, but also a place where they could have their industry. And this basement specifically is actually a place where they made olive oil, and they would come down these steps, and this has been excavated and available. In here is where they would put the olives. There would be a mule or a cow connected to this beam of wood, moving this really big heavy stone, crushing the olive oils. That's the first press, the really good olive oil. And then over here, they would bring these thin baskets, we'll see an example in a moment, and bring them, and they would be placed underneath this beam of wood that would be connected to these weights, just like what you see over here. And the weight of this beam would crush the olives even further, and all of the oil would flow down into the big basin down below. So this is literally a 2,200-year-old olive oil press. We know that this was not Jewish because of this niche over here, where they would place the idol. There would be the idol of prosperity, or the idol of making good olive oil, and so on. And why were they making olive oil? What was the reason for olive oil back then? And if you've been on a tour with me before, you probably know the answer to this. Olive oil was the electricity of the ancient world. This is how they would light up their buildings and their houses. And in fact, they used a very little olive lamp. Here's a real olive oil lamp from Marisha, excavated in this place that we're looking at right now. My wife, Amy, was an archaeologist that worked there. Don't worry, she didn't steal anything. There's a dime a dozen of these finds, but you can see the size and the shape, and it would be filled with olive oil. There would be a little wick sticking out from over here, and that's how they would basically
We're not seeing
put
anything.
You're not telling anybody. Okay, good. And that would be placed in
No,
one
we're
of the
not
niches
seeing
over here.
anything.
No, we aren't
So,
seeing it.
okay, you have to look at his little frame on the side, and then you see him showing. It's because, Gadi, because you're sharing your screen,
Okay,
unless if we don't look at your square, that's it. Now we could see it.
here we go. Sorry. So here's the olive oil lamp. Okay. And again, not complete, but there would be a basin here with olive oil and a wick over here. And this would be how they would light their houses and buildings back then during the ancient times. And this is from Marisha, from this place that we're looking at. And this is the olive oil industry, as I mentioned before. Of course, olive oil is very important for our story, and we'll continue to talk about that as well. So back then, how did they make olive oil? Here's a fun little video of a kid from Modi'in, the town where I'm from and where the Maccabees were from, that's going to learn with his mom at a place nearby called Neot Kedumim, how they used to make olive oil back in the day before the day.
Modi'in is a city where Judah Maccabee and his brothers lived long ago. The Maccabees rededicated the temple in Jerusalem. They used olive oil to light the menorah. That olive oil burned for 8 days and nights. Tonight, I will light my own Hanukkah for Hanukkah, the festival of lights. This Chanukah is special. It has been in my family for years, and we need olive oil to light it. I am very excited because today my mom is taking me to a special place called Neot Kedumim.
This is actually nearby to Modi'in.
The way the Maccabees did, and we will use it to light our Hanukkah.
Hello, hi. How are you?
Michal is our guide.
Welcome to Neot Kedumim.
She will teach us how to make olive oil out of freshly picked olives.
Why did you come to visit me?
To see how to make olive oil.
Wow. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go. First, we pick the olives from the trees.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but you don't eat olives right off the tree. They're not edible. They actually need to sit in a brine for a long time, for months, to be edible. But the main reason we pick olives is for the oil, obviously.
With those 2 stones.
So what they're using this system is the ancient method of making olive oil back in the ancient times.
Squeeze the oil out of them.
And now we need to move this very, very heavy stone. Do you think you can do it? Ooh. Ooh, it's
Barely.
heavy. Maybe Mommy will help you. Maybe I will help too. Okay, you want some help? Do we need to call somebody?
Jasmine the mule and Musa, her owner, help us move the big stone and crush the olives. Making olive oil is hard work.
So usually there would be an animal that would do this.
Now we have
The olive paste is put into flat baskets and then onto a special press.
very nice.
Musa turns the handle, the olive paste is pressed.
The
and
first
the
press
oil
was the
drains
extra
out.
virgin olive
Look
oil.
at these shiny
And now we're getting
drops.
another kind of olive
The
oil,
olive
which
oil
we'll
is
talk
collected,
about later as
filtered,
well.
and poured into bottles. Now we can light our Hanukkah with olive oil just like Judah Maccabee did in the temple in Jerusalem.
Excellent, very good. And this is in Modi'in, the town that we're sitting in right now in Israel. So that was the process of making the olive oil. Using the first press was actually the extra virgin olive oil, and it's done very carefully so that the pit isn't broken, because then there's water in there. And that was the kind of oil that was brought especially to the temple. But you might be asking yourselves, why are we in Marisha? What does that have to do with anything? And the answer is that here's the upstairs of the basement that we saw before. This is what it looks like up above. There used to be houses here, but not anymore. And the reason is because this place is connected to the story of Hanukkah. A few years ago, about 15 years ago, archaeologists excavating in these caves, when they were starting to dig down into the cave, they saw on the side a small hole that they ignored in the beginning because it was too small for anybody to actually go in there. And one morning when they came back to work, they saw that that hole became bigger and someone might have gotten in there. And what they found when they went in there as well was this. They found these three small fragments of some kind of sign, some kind of steel or stone sign that was placed there. This big piece was missing. Turns out later that antique robbers were there during the night and stole this big piece. And why is this important to Hanukkah? Because in the book of Maccabees, which is the main source for the stories of Hanukkah, we hear about a guy named Heliodorus. And Heliodorus came to Jerusalem and said to the high priest, I want to take the treasures of the temple. And the priest said to him, no way, you can't do this. Forcefully, he went into the temple and wanted to take the money from the temple. But according to the book of Maccabees, all of a sudden they heard some bangs and all kinds of noises and somebody screaming, and Heliodorus comes out of the temple all banged up. And the book of Maccabees says that he was so traumatized, he said he was attacked by angels that said to him, no way, Jose, you should not be messing with the money of the Jewish people. Get out of here and go back to your king. So this is in the book of Maccabees. This steel or this piece of rock actually has on it the name of this guy Heliodorus mentioned in the book of Maccabees. And we're flying over now to the Israel Museum, to the archaeology section. And what happened a few years after these three fragments were found, an antique collector was approached by someone who sold him this big piece. And now everything came together. They understood, since they knew where these three fragments came from, they knew where the main piece fits in. And this is in fact a announcement made by Heliodorus himself, saying that from this point on, everyone needs to pay higher taxes to the king Antiochus IV in Damascus. Here's a painting from the Middle Ages, from the Renaissance, of the story of Heliodorus that is mentioned, as I said, in the book of Maccabees. So this is a very cool find that actually gives us an outside source of the book of Maccabees about what happened in the rebellion. Why did these people in the area rebel against the Romans, against the Greeks, sorry. So from here, we're going to talk about the Jews and see where that fits in. And here we are in Modi'in, the city of Modi'in. This is about a mile away from where we are. And this is a synagogue, ancient synagogue that was excavated here. We know it's a synagogue because there's actually a mikveh nearby. Here's a better picture of it. And the mikveh down here, there was a mikveh that was found. So we know that this is a synagogue. And in fact, perhaps this is where the story of the beginning of the rebellion of the Maccabees started. Let's imagine that in this synagogue, a Greek official comes in and says to Mattathias and his family that are sitting there celebrating Shabbat or during the prayers. And he says to them, you're not allowed anymore to practice your Judaism, no more sacrifices at the temple, no more pilgrimage, no more Brit Milah, no more circumcision. You're not allowed to practice your Judaism anymore. In fact, you need to sacrifice unclean animals and you need to pray to the Greek gods. And Mattathias stands up and he says, no way, we're not doing this. And he kills the Greek official, kills another one of the Jews that was actually willing to do what the Greeks were telling them to do. And this is the quote from the book of Maccabees. Essentially, this is where the rebellion starts, maybe even in this synagogue that we see here. Perhaps this is the place where it all started. I know. Keep pressing the wrong buttons. Sorry. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. So assuming that this is where the rebellion started, maybe this is where the story actually begins. And we know that Judah the Maccabee, one of the sons of Matityahu, one of the sons of Mattathias, led the rebellion against the Romans. And one of the things that is very symbolic in the story of Hanukkah is the idea of we are all a small light, as Deanna was saying, and we're all a strong light together. And one of our most fun songs on Hanukkah is Banu Choshech Legaresh, or we came to chase away the night. And this is a song that I grew up on as a kid. We sing it all the time. And I wanted to bring you a Israeli rendition of a couple. These two are called Yonina. His name is Yoni, she's Nina. So together they're Yonina. And this is a mashup song that they made, which they've added another lyrics of another song by a rapper called Eminem, not Jewish. But the idea of the song is, I think, very symbolic, and I like their tune. So we'll hear a few of the couple minutes of the song. Kol echad hu or katan, we are all a small light, but together we are very strong. Move away darkness, move away from the light.
I'm not afraid, take a stand, take a stand.
And of course, their little daughter is the star of the evening.
Walk this road together through the storm, whatever's weather. Now you know that you're not alone. I would give you feel like you've been down, say no. Not afraid to take a stand. through the storm. But I feel like I cold the wall. Let you know that you're not alone. I make you feel like you've been down the same way. Darkness of the night. Leave and make way for the light.
Beautiful. So these are Yonina, as I mentioned before, and just a connection to chasing away the darkness using the light. So from here, the Maccabees start their fight, and eventually, after, as I mentioned, 3 whole years, they eventually end up back in Jerusalem. And let's take a look at the area of the temple that they took over. Obviously, it was not the Golden Dome that we see there today, but let's say that they took over the temple. And what they realized is that the menorah that burns in the temple, as we know, was not there with oil to burn anymore. And here's a picture of the temple. This is the temple of Herod, but we can assume that the area looked more or less the same, a little less fancy. But when the Maccabees arrived, they realized that there's no oil for the menorah. Now, the book of Maccabees, believe it or not, does not mention at all this miracle of the finding of the little container. In fact, the book of Maccabees talks about the success of the fights against the Greeks and how they were able to save Jerusalem and rededicate the temple. But the story of the small container, as you can read here, actually comes out from the Talmud about 600 years later, when this idea of finding a small container, kad katan, in the corner that perhaps was there, that remained from the time when the Greeks destroyed the temple. And here's possibly what the temple would have looked like. There's a description of the temple of Solomon. And when they finally liberated the temple and rededicated it, they needed to recreate this special olive oil that was used for the temple. Now, for the menorah in the temple, they used only the best extra special olive oil. The first press before any of the water got in there, and it would be placed in containers, and then there would be a seal on it of the high priest. And if you read what it said here, all of the containers were smashed, and there was one container with the seal of the priest on it, meaning it's kosher, hiding in the corner. And the miracle, of course, that it didn't last for 1 day, which is what it was expected to, but rather for 8 whole days. I heard a very interesting midrash, which is sort of an interpretation of the biblical stories, that the first human, Adam, in his first year of life, noticed that the sun in the winter gets shorter and shorter, and the days are getting shorter and shorter. And all of a sudden, the days were getting shorter, the darkness was taking over, and he started mourning this idea. He thought that the days are going to get shorter and shorter, and eventually darkness will take over. So he's in mourning, he's crying and very sad about his situation. But then the light started coming back. As we know that after Hanukkah, the light starts coming back. So he started celebrating that the light is coming back into his life. And the idea here is that he was mourning for 8 days. And then when the light started coming back, he was celebrating for 8 days. And eventually the feeling of celebration took over and was much stronger than the feeling of anxiety and depression that was before, which is why we celebrate for 8 days, and we celebrate the idea of the light. Connected to that also is this idea of how do we light the menorah or the Chanukah in Hanukkah? Do we start with 1 or do we start with all 8? And again, it's the question of the light diminishing or the light starting from the darkness and taking over with the light. So some interesting connections here. Now, what did the temple actually look like? We're going to fly all the way up to the north of Israel and see a model of the temple. I bet you didn't know that there's a model of the temple in Israel. This is a place called Tel Dan. It's in the north of Israel. And what we're looking at here is perhaps one of the only models of the actual temple from the time of Solomon and what the Maccabees might have liberated at the time. The temples in Jerusalem were destroyed and built over numerous times, but this was built by a guy named Jeroboam when the kingdom of Israel separates and breaks off. We have the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judea. This is after King Solomon dies. And what we see here is an outside courtyard and an inside courtyard and an altar in the middle and some kind of building that might have been the Holy of Holies or the building of the temple itself. And archaeologists believe that this is in fact a model, probably true to size and to scale, of what the temple and the size of the temple would have looked like in Jerusalem, because when the kingdom of Israel splits after Solomon's death, the northern kingdom couldn't access Jerusalem, so they built their own version of the temple. And this is according to the book of Kings. They actually built this in the city of Dan. So perhaps this is what the temple would have looked like in terms of the size and what the courtyards and the building and everything inside would have looked like. So we know that the menorah was saved and they needed to light the menorah, but I'm assuming that you all know this because you're very smart people, that Adam Sandler was completely wrong when he wrote the song, right? Adam Sandler has a song about Hanukkah, and he says, David Lee Roth lights the menorah, and so do many other fine-looking Jews and so on, but they're wrong. It's not a menorah. The menorah is a 7-arm candelabra that was standing in the temple. The Chanukiah that we light on Hanukkah has 8 arms. Very good, thank you very much. 8 arms because of the miracle that we celebrate, that the one container was enough for 8 days, or perhaps because of the story of Adam, or perhaps because the Maccabees wanted to celebrate Sukkot, because remember, the beginning of the story was that they ended up not being able to celebrate Sukkot for a while. So it's actually based on the model of the menorah, but it's a Chanukiah with 8 arms celebrating that. And in fact, the symbol of the state of Israel is the menorah. And here we are right outside. No, we'll get to that in a moment. Before that, we're going to have a little tour of the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem. I was there last night and the night before, and this is right by the Broad Wall and the best coffee shop right in here of the old city in Jerusalem. And one of the traditions about the light of the menorah is that it's not supposed to be inside. It's not supposed to be just for us. In fact, we're told that the light of the menorah should shine to all of the people around us. So there's a tradition of lighting the menorah and putting it in your window. I don't know if you do this in North America or not. There were times where our people were worried about putting a menorah in the window because that would identify them as Jews and perhaps they would be attacked. But here in Israel, we have no such problems. So take a look at these pictures from a couple days ago in the Jewish quarter. This is an entrance to an apartment building, and they have this apparatus that's out here only for the sole purpose of displaying the menorahs, the Chanukiot on Hanukkah. And of course, this was an artistic picture that I thought was kind of cool. And we were able, my friend and I, Itamar, we saw a family lighting their Chanukiah, and we asked them if we could film them and show it to the wonderful ladies of Naamat, and they said, of course, no problem. So here we are with the Epstein family in the Jewish Quarter, lighting their Chanukiah. Dad saying the blessing, and all of the family members are lighting their own Chanukiah. That says thank you to Itamar for taking the pictures. So you walk around the Jewish Quarter, you see all of these Chanukiot on display. And here's another movie that we took the next day, where we're basically walking around. We'll see some of the beautiful menorahs in the Jewish Quarter. The light, as I said, from the olive oil. And the idea is to spread the light to everyone. This was literally filmed yesterday in the Old City. So some people put them in the windows. Beautiful. So I'm glad I could bring all of you with me on tour in the Old City in the Jewish Quarter last night. And let's talk a little bit about the menorah and the idea of the menorah. As you know, we're here by the Knesset, the Parliament of Israel. And this menorah is the symbol of the state of Israel. Here's a better picture. And this was donated by, or given as a gift to the state of Israel by the British government. And it's based on, it's probably incorrect because it's based on the famous Arch of Titus that is in Rome. Titus was the Roman general that destroys Jerusalem and the Second Temple, 70 CE. And here's a engraving on the Arch of Titus. By the way, I don't know if any of you have been there. As a kid, I've seen this picture a lot. I was expecting a huge, amazing, huge arch. It's not such an impressive arch. There are some much more impressive and larger arches, but still very important piece for our people. And Adam Sandler, as I mentioned before, we won't get into him too much. But let's figure out, where does this super duper extra special, extra virgin olive oil come from for the temple? And the answer to that is down below by the temple, between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount. And just the mere fact that the hill is known as Mount of Olives means that there were olive groves growing down there. And this is an area called Gat Shmanim. Take a look at this really old olive tree, believed to be about 1,000 years old. Look at the trunk. This is all one tree. Gat Shmanim in Hebrew means the place of the olive press. It was derived later on and becomes Gethsemane. Gethsemane is very important for the Christian world. This is where Jesus and the disciples are camping out when they're here during a Passover pilgrimage. But the important point here is that Gat Shmanim, the place of the olive press, is where this special oil was made for the temple. Right below the Temple Mount, fresh from the olive press. It was brought to the temple. Now, the olives are ready to be harvested only in the season of October, November, December, which means that you have fresh olive oil only for about 6 months of the year. The rest of the year, what they did was put this olive oil for the menorah in containers that were supervised and sealed by the high priest and were stored at the temple in order for them to be used for the light of the menorah. Here's some more ancient olive trees. And of course, this is a modern interpretation or way of making olive oil. You can see these baskets. This is a new one, but this is basically what the baskets look like. They're flat. They would be filled with olives and then placed on this in this area, in this tub, and the big stone, grinding stone, would go above those baskets, squeeze out the first press, the first extra virgin olive oil. And the best olive oil is the kind that you bring directly from the tree to the olive press without waiting too much time. That's called a cold press. And that is the best kind of olive oil even today. And these are just examples of these ancient methods of creating olive oil. I think
I have a question.
Yes.
When you pick the olives off the tree, they're not edible unless you
Correct.
put them in a brine, but you can take them off and press them and the oil is then edible, or no?
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, the best kind of olive oil is one that's pressed right away, immediately when it comes off the tree. Yes, that's an interesting, I never thought of that in order to eat the olives, they have to be prepared. But the oil is absolutely ready to eat afterwards. Remember that during the ancient times, they did eat olives. I mean, they probably had martinis. No, just kidding. They needed their olives for some eating and for maybe putting on their food. But for the most part, the olive oil was for lighting their houses, and the special olive oil was even used for something else, which I believe is our next slide. Yes, the olive oil was used to anoint the kings. So olive oil is seen as the provider of life, the provider of light, the provider of the most important symbol in Judaism. And in fact, we're at the foothills of Bethlehem, the fields where a little short guy, redhead, the youngest of 8 brothers, was hanging out. Who am I talking about? Anybody recognize who this is? David, of course. David is in the fields. Samuel is told by God, and here's the story. God says to him, take your ram's horn, shofar essentially, fill it up with oil and go and find the next king of Israel. And Samuel says to him, but how am I going to find him? And God says, don't worry, I'll point him out to you. Go to this guy Jesse and ask him to meet his sons. One of them will be the king. And it's kind of like the story of Cinderella over here. Jesse brings his sons, the real handsome one, the real tall one, and Samuel basically says, no, it's not these guys. Don't you have another son? And Jesse says, what, you mean the little pisher, David, the guy that's in the fields? And Samuel says, yeah, it's got to be one of your sons, so there's none left. So David eventually comes, and just as David walks in, God whispers in Samuel's ear and says, that's him. He is the anointed one. And think about, in English, we actually use that term, the anointed one, as the one who is chosen by God. And the word anointment, or ointment even, that we talk about today, is this special oil, olive oil, And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. Imagine the big brothers looking at their little pisher brother and saying, he's going to be the king. By the way, David had some issues with that later on as well. And another story of all of this is when Samuel anoints Saul, even before David. There's another story of Saul being anointed by Samuel. And just the word in Hebrew, think about the word Mashiach. Mashiach comes from the word the anointed one. Mashiach or mishcha, ointment in Hebrew, and limshoach is to anoint the person who was chosen by God. So even the word Mashiach connects to the olive oil, and during the temple existence, the priest would take the best olive oil, mix it up with some different incense and spices that are told to do that in the Torah, in the Bible, and that was the special anointing oil that was used for kings and for the priests. So olive oil, important in that element as well. Another place where this took place, just another quick reference, is in Jerusalem, the Gihon Spring. If you've been to Hezekiah's tunnel, this is the entrance to the tunnel, the cold water tunnel that goes underneath the walls of Jerusalem. And over here, we hear another story from the book of from the book of Kings, of Solomon being anointed. And we can read it here. David says to the priest and to his prophet Nathan, you need to anoint my son Solomon even before I die, because the brothers, the big brothers, were fighting. It's interesting because David himself was the youngest. Solomon was not the oldest son of David. So by law, he wasn't supposed to be the next in line. So David did sort of a interesting thing here, but he says, take Solomon to the Gihon spring, which is where we are, and anoint him with oil to be king. So this idea of anointing and using olive oil, very important in our story. And finally, the modern olive oil and what it's used for is a place that some of you have seen already. And I have some other stories and some other pieces. Sindiana of the Galilee is a wonderful organization. And I'll let them introduce themselves. They produce fair trade olive oil in the Galilee. And one of their missions and goals is to provide work for Muslim and Christian and Arab women, together with the Jewish women, together with the Jewish women in the Galilee. So let's see what they have to say. They grow their own olives. They bring their families to collect the olives as well. And here's an introduction and a couple of videos about what they do. We'll meet Nadia, who is one of their directors, who speaks beautifully about the mission of the organization, which I think in many ways connects well to the story of Naamat and the ideas of Naamat as well.
סינדיאנת הגליל היא הגוף המוביל בישראל לשיווק של תוצרת חקלאית על פי עקרונות של סחר הוגן. מאז הקמתה על ידי ערבים ויהודים שמאמינים בעתיד משותף, היא הפכה לשם נרדף לאיכות, הגינות ודו-קיום.
They're located near Nazareth in the Lower Galilee.
מקדמת העסקה של נשים ערביות, תורמת לשיתוף פעולה יהודי-ערבי ומסייעת לחקלאים ערבים בישראל. ב-93-94 עלה הרעיון להקים את סינדיאנה, בכוונה לעזור לחקלאים
לשווק את השמן שלהם. זו הייתה המטרה הראשונה.
התחלנו באריזה ושיווק של שמן זית בכפר קטן במג'ד אל-כרום, ומשם התחלנו להעמיק את הקשרים שלנו, הן עם חקלאים ערבים, יצרני שמן זית ומוצרים נוספים, והן עם השוק המקומי, ובהמשך עם השוק העולמי.
וב-96 הגענו לרעיון של האורגני. הפכתי את כל השטחים שהם בבעלות המשפחה שלנו לשטחים אורגניים, והתחלנו לשווק שמן אורגני, כי זו הייתה שיטה או אפשרות בכלל לשווק את השמן או למצוא מחיר יותר טוב לשמן.
21% of the population of Israel are not Jewish, and they're mostly Muslim, a little bit Christian, Druze, and most of them live in the Galilee, in the area of Nazareth, Haifa, Tiberias, and north. Notice that it's green and black olives. I'll talk about that in a moment. I wonder if they play the music while they're packing everything to give them a little... We're saying 1, 2, 3 in Arabic. Let's go. Peace. Salam. Very good. So this is an introduction of Sindiana. It's a wonderful project. The idea was to provide jobs for some of these women. Remember that some of these women don't actually go to work in that tradition in these areas. Most of the women don't actually go to work at all. It's changing nowadays. But even before that, there's a lack of education for many of the women as well. And here's Nadia. This is one of the founders. She speaks wonderfully about this idea of providing jobs and equality and strength for the women of the Galilee. And this was filmed during the 2020 Women's Day. I'm not sure what the term is, or celebrating women around the world. So some of you have seen this, but I thought she speaks really well, and we'll see a little bit more of it. International Women's Day, okay. My name is Miasser Hamasi. I'm from Kfar Kana in the Galilee, and I work here in the Sindiana organization. It's an organization for fair trade for Jewish and Arab women. I teach weaving to groups who come in, and the woman who gave me the inspiration to come here is Nadia, who's the director of the center. She always encourages me to develop and to advance myself.
I work here in Sindiana of Galilee as a chief facilitator and manager. I started my journey here in Sindiana 4 years ago. I'm a mom for 2 girls. I grew up in a Muslim family, and I married with a Christian Catholic, and the gatherness of different languages and cultures, it's enriched our life and our family. I host here in Sindiana of Galilee thousands of visitors in the year, and the most thing that I enjoy when I meet people, it's connecting with different languages, cultures, and faith. And this is only a proof that all of us, we are a human being, and we can gather together from all around the world. As a woman that I grew up in very traditional community, today I see myself have a responsibility to support not only myself and my family, also to support other women to make a difference in their life and in their family life. And the women that they come here to the visitor center, after 40, 30 years from their life as a housewives, and they grow their children, and now they look for something to support themselves economically. And they come here and they learn and they start a journey with multicultural community here in Sindiana of Galilee, Arab and Jewish together. This is something that I'm a witness. There's something amazing happening here, connecting between women from different culture and faith, and their children and their family, they start to get to know each other. It's something powerful and something that we can only be thankful for it. And this is happening in one place. And my wish also, what we are doing here, it's also can happen in other places where women also feel that they need the empowering and they need the support to make a difference in their life. And the meaning of my name is hope. And always I feel that I have a hope. And this hope, I want to spread it and to share it with other women in the world, and to tell them they have power and they have to take the step and the responsibility to make a difference in their life and in others.
Well said. And one of their most beautiful projects is creating a special line of products that the kids were brought in to create together. And these are kids of Arab and
olive oil create hope?
Arab and Jewish citizens of Israel.
A non-profit organization led
And
by
this is
Arab
part
and
of the
Israeli
beauty
women
of what they
has
do.
created a new line of fair trade olive oils through a unique collaboration. One day, one unified message, bringing together Arab and Israeli children to create colorful artworks for the new
So they're
labels
both
of
Israeli.
Sindiana
They're
olive
all
oil.
citizens of
The
Israel.
same award-winning fair trade olive oil produced by their mothers, side by side. The children were asked to illustrate ideas of optimism, togetherness, and hope. Speaking two different languages, yet united by endless colors and shades, the children formed instant bridges between the two cultures and together helped bring the new Sindiana vision to life. By changing the word virgin with unified, positive, hopeful, and peaceful, the new Sindiana labels now convey an inspiring message of empowerment and peace. Every single bottle of Sindiana Fair Trade olive oil encapsulates a taste of coexistence. All profits support the creation of economic opportunities and education for Arab and Israeli women and promote peace for future generations. Sindiana, the taste of fair trade.
We can only hope. Very good. And finally, we have a special treat for all of you. We finished our tour, but before we finish, we have greetings from all around North America, the US and Canada, and Israel, actually, that are coming up. So hopefully you'll see yourselves here in the video if you sent us your greeting. I thought Modi'in, where it all started and where I live, was the appropriate place to do this. So let's start our video and say hello to everybody.
Dear חברות, Happy Hanukkah, Chag Sameach. Miss you so much. Hope to see you soon in Israel. Keep well.
Hi everyone, Chanukah Sameach from Naamat International.
Happy Hanukkah, I'm Ronnie.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. Keep safe and healthy and have a great holiday. Chanukah Sameach to you and your families from Naamat Israel, Naamat International.
Happy Hanukkah from Shelley in Chicago. I hope everyone has a healthy and safe Hanukkah and enjoys the beautiful lights of the menorah.
Hi from the Migdal family in Los Angeles, California. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah from Janet Riker at Aviva Naamat, northwest suburbs of Chicago.
The thank yous, by the way, are from the daycare centers
Hello,
in
my
Israel.
name is Felicia Gross. I'm the Midwest Area Director. And these greetings are from one of our members and her husband. Happy Hanukkah to all of our friends in Naamat, from Sandra and Lee Silverglade.
I'm Sam.
I'm Adar.
I'm Eamon.
I'm Dylan. I'm Kyla, and this is Lily.
We live in Scarsdale, New York, and want to wish you all a very happy Hanukkah. Chag Sameach.
So this is one of the Naamat daycare centers celebrating Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah from the Naamat USA National Office.
Wishing you a very happy Hanukkah from Western Area Naamat. Happy Hanukkah to everyone. Again, Aviva Club, Chicago.
Happy Hanukkah from Naamat, Midwest Area.
Happy Hanukkah from Cleveland Council.
Hi, this is Jan Gurvich from East Windsor, New Jersey, and I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. Chag Sameach.
We thank you very much. You're so cute. Say hello, everybody.
יופי, רוי, כל הכבוד, שלום, תעשו שלום, תעשי שלום, הראל, שלום, כל הכבוד, אביבי.
Happy Hanukkah from Bill Jones and Linda Schoenberg from Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Chag Sameach.
From our house to your house.
Hi, this is Jane Rosenblum from Boynton Beach, Florida, Untitled Chapter, wishing all of you a happy and a healthy Hanukkah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Letow, wishing everybody a happy Hanukkah from the Hesed Group in Boynton Beach, Florida.
Something went wrong with the sound on this one.
Happy Hanukkah to you. Happy Hanukkah to you. Happy Hanukkah to everyone. Happy Hanukkah to you. From the Katz and Lobel families.
Happy Hanukkah.
From Naamat, Canada, Calgary. Wishing you
Bright lights.
good health, lots of latkes, and a safe and happy holiday. Happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Shalom. My name is Ange. I am the Naamat Eastern Area Director, and I'd like to wish you all a happy and healthy Hanukkah.
Have a very happy Hanukkah. Chag Chanukah Sameach from Sarah Mann in Toronto, Canada.
Happy Hanukkah from Debbie Cohn in Delray Beach, Florida.
Yofi, happy Hanukkah, everyone. And
Gotti, can I
yes,
throw a couple questions in the chat and a couple comments
Okay.
to mention before we.
yes.
Someone had asked if there was a Muslim holiday that celebrated olive oil. Do you know something about that?
I don't know about that. No.
All right. And also, does anyone else know anything about that? Anyone here?
I would like to wish from Israel, happy Hanukkah to everyone in live.
Hi, Shirley. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey, Shirley.
Happy Hanukkah, Chag Sameach to everybody, good health, and waiting to see you all in Israel, celebrating next year together.
Be'ezrat Hashem.
It was great, Gadi. Thank you so much for the tour.
Toda rabah.
Thank you,
You said there was, Deanna, you said there was more questions or?
There was one other mention, just that the Sindiana oil can be, you can get it on Amazon. So if anybody's interested in purchasing it, it is available on Amazon.
Okay. Very good.
And they should go to smile.amazon so that Naamat can get some credit.
Absolutely.
Very good. So Amy's here with the Hanukkah candles. Do we have any more greetings and blessings before we light the candles, Deanna?
No,
Or
I think
Marcy?
any other
No, we're
questions or
good?
comments? Anybody have anything else?
So in the United States, we're still on the third day. We have to wait until sundown for the fourth candle. So you're lighting 4 and we're lighting 3.
Okay.
Unless there's a rabbi in the house that says otherwise.
We have the daughter of a
We
rabbi.
give you the
Does that count?
permission. Linda, we give you a permission from Israel.
To do what? 3 or 4?
To light 4.
Whatever.
Okay, I'd just like to say one thing. Happy Hanukkah to all from the Long Island Queens Council of Naamat. I didn't do a video, but I want you to know that the Long Island Queens Council is thinking of everyone and wishing everyone a very happy and joyful Hanukkah.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah from
There are a
St.
couple
Louis.
others. I just wanted to mention, there's a couple others. There's a happy Hanukkah from Phyllis and Frank Weiss of the Cleveland Council, and from Hamilton, Canada, and from Gail in Agora Hills, California, from the Mitzvah chapter, and from Sherry Tessis Camrad in Toronto, Ontario Club, Liana.
St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
Happy Hanukkah from St. Louis, Missouri.
Great. And from my Canada, and from Rosette Strubel. And yeah, that's it. Karen Pollock says happy Hanukkah. She grew up in Queens.
Okay, so if you want to, whether the rabbi allows it or not.
Okay, I was hoping to show my Chanukah, but I don't think it's going to happen. Everybody get your shamish and light it.
And why don't we, once we've light the Chanukiot, we can have people bring the Chanukiot or show it on the screen. We can have the screens with the Chanukiot there. So we usually use a shamash in Israel. It's just because this is special olive oil in these containers. So we're actually lighting a Chanukiah with olive oil.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'osa mitzvotenu v'yamim ha'em la'azeh.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag
Happy
Sameach.
Hanukkah. Beautiful. If people can we show our Chanukiot? I don't know if that might be dangerous.
Yes, we'd like to. Why not?
Oh, there you go. Very good.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Good health. Stay safe.
Okay,
Chag Sameach L'Kulam from Philadelphia chapter.
yes, the Long Island Queens Council. The Long Island Queens Council is having a Hanukkah celebration tomorrow night. Now, if anyone, and we're going to just what was special about our Hanukkah in our childhood, and or how we celebrated Hanukkah with our children when they were younger. If anyone would like to join us, I can send you the flyer about Hanukkah, and we'd be more than happy to have you. And it's at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. So let me know if you're interested.
Hanukkah Sameach from Agora Hills.
Chag Sameach for Oak Park next to Agora Hills.
Happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Thank you so much, Patty. Good to see you again.
Happy
Thank you,
Hanukkah.
Gotti.
Happy
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good holiday.
Happy
Hanukkah.
Thank you for a wonderful program.
And bring on 2021.